This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
Provided notice of motion, I'd like to move it now. I move that the committee hold a meeting immediately after the committee study of Bill C-20 on the rights of victims of crime and the security reclassification and transfer of offenders within federal corrections, that the committee invite the Commissioner of Correctional Service Canada, Ann Kelly, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety, Sean Tupper, and the Correctional Investigator, the Federal Ombudsman for Victims of Crime, Tim Danson, and officials from the Department of Justice and Public Safety. And Mr. Chair, now that that's in the record, I'd like to speak briefly on this. Now, if members opposite, if Conservatives decide to filibuster using this issue, women will be the judge of their issues and who is actually fighting for real legislation that will have an impact versus using heinous crimes as a way to create clickbait. I saw some members out there filming their videos already. Perhaps it's to hit their fundraising targets. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Thank you, Chair, and it's a pleasure to work with you both again. It's been a hot minute. I am a woman, and I've been watching what's happened here, and kind of shocked me a little too, to be honest with you. So I'm glad to have an opportunity to speak to this today. I will go to the substance of my colleague's argument for her motion, and then try to perhaps propose an alternative. So, my colleague said that the motion that she put forward addressed all the concerns of all colleagues. I don't think it does. Some of the issues that have been raised, and I spent yesterday looking through the committee testimony. It was romantic reading, Chair, to be sure. My understanding is that the impasse that we're at in this committee is that some colleagues feel that there should be more meetings, particularly to give victims an opportunity to talk about the impact from their perspective. I also don't think that there has been an opportunity for correctional services officers, particularly the union, to give their feedback on whether or not the measures the government has put in place are adequate. So this is what I propose, and then I'd like to give my rationale with respect for what I'm proposing. So I move to amend the motion such that all the words after the word "that" be replaced with the following. And Chair, I will ensure that this is circulated in both official languages to you, particularly for my colleague in the block. So I move that all the words after the word "that" be replaced with the following. The committee hold a minimum of 3 meetings immediately after the committee's study of Bill C-20 on Paul Bernardo's transfer from a maximum security prison to a medium security prison, the rights of victims of crime and the security reclassification and transfer of offenders within federal corrections, provided that the committee invite the Minister of Public Safety to appear alone for no less than 2 hours, and the former Minister of Public Safety, Marco Mendicino, to appear alone for no less than 2 hours, the Commissioner of Correctional Services Canada, Ann Kelly, the Deputy Minister of Public Safety, Sean Tupper, the Correctional Investigator, the Federal Ombudsperson for Victims of Crime, and the representatives of the victim's family, including Tim Danson, and that the committee report its findings to the House. So,
Conservatives say this is important legislation, but the lengthy filibuster using this horrendous act doesn't show it. Watch, the point was made clear to me, Mr. Chair, when I walked into this room and a member of the Conservative Party was putting together what I assume is a fundraising video, and smiling as he was showing his assistant the video, as he had his mic set up and ready to go and ready to post it to social media, that this is a game.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for this opportunity to address the motion moved by Ms. O'Connell and the amendment put forward by my colleague. Just maybe a couple words of clarification at the outset. Both Liberal members who spoke have referenced the fact that I was recording a social media post prior to this meeting, and I don't think there's anything wrong with me communicating on a regular basis with my constituents about the things that are happening in committee. Out of interest, it had nothing to do with fundraising. It was a video recorded on a parliamentary device updating my constituents on parliamentary activities, and making very clear in the context of that post that Conservatives will be continuously advocating for families of victims as well as their representatives to be heard on this issue, and there's nothing unusual about our view that that's a legitimate position, the right position, and something that constituents should be aware of. I make no apologies for informing people about my activities in Parliament, and it's sort of curious that became a real talking point.
I think a couple of things that I want to just reinforce with this new amendment, or this new sub-amendment. The amendment to Ms. O'Connell's motion, and there's a couple of thoughts that I want to get to through this process. Mr. Biddle commented that based on the reference to Conservatives playing games on this matter, nothing could be further from the truth. This is not a game. This is about the rights of victims. And he can laugh over there all he wants, Mr. Chair, but I don't know what this government is so afraid of. If we're really talking about dealing with the victims, the rights of victims' families, the specifically on the reclassification of security of our inmates, and this is beyond this specific transfer. There are multiple examples of families being re-victimized again and again and again in the same specific way to this transfer. And this government has a history, quite honestly, of ignoring victims. So, there are serious sentences, life sentences, previously dangerous offenders, those serving their time in maximum security prisons who are now being transferred to medium security prisons. And, quite honestly, it really concerned me when I saw some of the stats that came out from an OPQ, order paper. Thank you, an order paper question with respect to this exact question. There are dangerous offender designated prisoners in our prison system who are serving their time initially in maximum, but now they're in medium security prisons. 580 of them, as a matter of fact, previously designated or currently designated dangerous offenders who are now serving their time in medium security prisons. And there's even over 50 serving their time in minimum security prisons. And we know the freedom of these individuals certainly vary with respect to the level of security in their facility. So now, this has an impact on the families who were victimized the first time around. And as I was going to say earlier, is the Canadians are left to wonder. I mean, we are, the Conservatives, of course, are the bad guys here now, apparently, because we are trying to stand up for a regime of transfers, reclassification, and potential transfers that has a direct impact on families, on victims. And so, why does this government refuse to study? I'm left to wonder. Canadians are wondering, what are they hiding? What are they afraid of finding out? Why would they not want to ensure that the legislation that allows for the transfer and reclassification of security for our prisoners not be examined, re-examined, be tightened up so as not to re-victimize families again? And talking about the victim, the impact that this has on families. From decades in law enforcement, families are victimized over and over and over again in the whole process of criminal justice, as we know. During the original offense, obviously, and the tragedy that occurred, they are victimized there. They have to relive that during the investigation, during the trial, during sentencing, during the preparation of victim impact statements. Then they have to deal with parole hearings and potentially more impact statements. And now we have to this added burden and traumatization to victims on transfers of reclassifications of prisoners, and we have to deal with it's not just the transfer that's the issue. It's the lack of communication that the correctional services, the minister's office, the Canadians experienced during this process, and such a transfer has to be victim informed. Has to be the impact of that trauma again has to be considered when doing a transfer. And Mr. Chair, I recognize that bells are going to be soon, and I want to give Ms. Michaud an opportunity to speak before bells, and I would ask that I come back when she's done if there's still time before bells. Thank you.
I think Mr. Motz has a few more points he wants to put on the record, but before that, I did want to respond to a couple of the things that were raised. So, in terms of like how a committee schedules its agenda, right? I think members understand that when a motion has been put on notice, members can move that motion regardless of the agenda, and I think that's an important provision because it. In the absence of such a provision, if members were required to confine themselves to the agenda, then a chair could repeatedly schedule issues that were schedule one issue to avoid, let's say, dealing with another issue. And I think knowing that there was a strong desire among committee members to address this issue before we proceeded to C20. The chair could have, let's say, scheduled this meeting as a meeting of committee business, which is in effect what we've ended up discussing anyways. It's simply that that the fact that the officials were invited because the agenda said C20 was maybe, I would suggest, Chair, there was a reality in terms of what this committee needed to discuss. The other just observation I would make, though, is that it was, of course, Ms. O'Connell who moved the motion, right? So it was a decision by the government to move their motion. Of course, our view was that this issue needed to be discussed, that it needed to be discussed with 3 meetings. But this is where we are. We're under the rubric of that discussion, and so we are, I think, in good faith trying to put forward, but also insist on our position. And our core position is that when it comes to this transfer of Paul Bernardo from maximum to medium security, that the families have to be heard on this issue, that the families have to have an opportunity to testify, that ministers have to be held accountable for their actions, that we need a proper investigation, a proper study of this issue. That is our position. That will continue to be our position, that families of victims need to be heard, and we need to hold the government accountable to ensure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Mr. Jennis. Mr. Motz, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would defer mine to the regular amendment and suggest we go ahead and vote on the sub-amendment, please.
Is there any more debate on the sub-amendment? Mr. Julian?
Just very briefly, I'll be voting against the sub-amendment, but with the intention of reintroducing it when we come back to the main motion, Mr. Chair. So just want to be very clear so my vote is not misinterpreted.
Okay. A recorded division, please, Mr. Clerk. On the sub-amendment, yes.
Ms. O'Connell.
No.
Mr. MacDonald. No. Monsieur Schiffke.
No.
Mr. Geir.
Against?
Mr. Biddle. Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Ms. Rempel Gardner,
Yes.
Mr. Melillo,
Yes.
Mr. Motz,
Yes.
Madame Michaud,
Contre.
Mr. Julian.
No, contre.
4 and 7 against.
Thank you. The sub-amendment is defeated. We carry on with the motion as amended by Ms. Rempel Garner, and we go to Mr. Julian. I believe you want. I'm sorry.
Point of order, Chair. I think you mean the amendment, not the motion as amended. We're on the amendment.
Correct. Thank you for the clarification. We go to the amendment, Ms. Rempel Garner's amendment to Ms. O'Connell's motion. So, Mr. Julian, I believe you wanted the floor following.
Just again, very briefly, Mr. Chair, what I'm hoping to do after, I'll be voting against the amendment, though there are some elements that I would like to bring back to Ms. O'Connell's motion. First off, that we hold a 3-hour meeting. Secondly, that the Minister of Public Safety be invited as soon as possible to come to committee on public safety issues. And then thirdly, that we receive a briefing on trauma-informed committee hearings, so that this committee will be as well informed as the Canadian Heritage Committee was, if in the future we are looking to have victims come forward. I also would be proposing at that time that the Union of Public Correctional Officers be brought in. I thought that was a helpful proposal from the Conservatives. So I'll be voting against the amendment, but with the intention of proposing some amendments. Now, Mr. Chair, I believe we're going to have bells very, very shortly, so we may not get to that today, but I'm hoping offline we can finally come to a consensus so that we can then move on to Bill C-20. A little bit like Madame Michaud, I'm anxious to improve the legislation, and hopefully we can do that at our next meeting.
So, are you moving that sub-amendment at this time?
No, because that would just make it too confusing.
Okay.
So
fair
I
enough.
will be voting against the amendment, and then I will be offering those amendments to Ms.
Very well,
O'Connell's
thank you.
helpful motion.
And I see that we do have bells. So we do require unanimous consent to continue. Do we have unanimous consent to continue?
Say it louder.
Do we have unanimous consent?
No, this one you can.
Seeing no
You want me
unanimous
to be
consent.
quieter, or now you want me to be louder, Chris?
Seeing no unanimous consent, the committee will stand adjourned at this time.